So hey guys, I had dropped a video on my channel, a short one, just saying that I was ready to do a question and answer video. That's something I've had sporadically in comments for at least 2 or 3 years now, so I figured I'd sit down and actually run through, looks like the 18 comments that we got here. I'll do as best I can to answer them. Pardon me. Had a long night, so I need some caffeine. All right. Garbage laptop here. Okay, first question. Pirelli condoms, 8 upvotes, the most number. Why don't you own an E46 M3? If you did, what would be the first mods? Well, I did. You can look back about a year ago. I had that 2002 titanium silver on black M3 convertible that I found in a field in North Dakota. The seller had told me it had a timing chain issue. I figured it was just a tensioner or a rail. Unfortunately, when I got the car back and got it running, it had a completely disintegrated rod bearing. So I ended up having to find a replacement engine for that thing out of California. And then while I was at it, it was an SMG at the time. I manual swapped it. I intended to do the 5-speed ZF swap on that just because I prefer that transmission and it's a little more cost effective. But I ended up putting in the 6-speed. I think I drove it for the entire season, then ended up selling it. I usually make money on cars. That one I didn't do so well on. I mean, I still made money, but that was kind of crap. It had H&R race springs in it, which I took out. I put factory springs back in. So I guess to answer the second part of your question, what would my mods be? I guess on a coupe or a convertible, I would do the carbon airbox, the replica one, with an Alpha N tune, because that makes the S54 just sound bananas. I have that box on my red E30 M3 with that engine, and it's just fabulous. Beyond that, just a nice set of pads and a nice set of tires, and then I wouldn't touch it. Those cars, I think, for sure the coupes anyway, especially if you have a slick top, no sunroof, I think those are going to be collector cars in the next 10-15 years. So if you can keep a relatively unmolested example, or at least keep your stock parts so you can return it that way, that'd be great. But on those cars, I mean, as long as you take care or keep track of the rod bearings, the cam bolts, and that Vanos hub, those things are super reliable. Assuming you have a 6-speed, the SMGs are not great. So hopefully that answers your question. It would just be basically that carbon airbox for a little more noise, and then better pads and tires just to kind of keep up with modern technology. But it's a fabulous car as it is. It really doesn't need anything else. Moving on, question 2. Stephen Ferrari, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, 7 upvotes. How are you able to afford your cars? Well, I've been doing this, I'm going to say doing this a long time. I'm only 26. I've only been doing this 12 years. Up until 2000, I want to say 10. I don't know. I've been doing videos sporadically since 2007 on YouTube, but up until about 2010, all of my cars were really cheap. They were, you know, $1,200 to maybe $3,000, and I had a lot of them. But I usually bought them right, with issues, fixed them, and then used them for a while, and then sold them as a profit. And what that let me do was basically trade up. So I'm able to take one car in my fleet, work on it for, you know, a couple of months, sell it for substantially more money, and then I'm able to get into something that's nicer, newer, or more interesting to me, with issues, of course, and then fixing those. I'm always wrenching on stuff, and there's pretty much nothing I can't figure out on a car. I don't really have any formal certifications or training, but I've done every job there is to do on a BMW. I've obviously done the engine out service on my Ferrari 355. I'm about to change out the engine and the IMS on this 2000 Porsche Boxster I blew up on the track, which is going to be a heap of fun. I do tons of engine swaps, like this 87 IS customer car here. That's got a 95 S50, US S50 in it. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, I do work a day job. I do architectural CAD drafting, so I work for a company that rehabilitates old stone buildings. And on any given day, I'm out in the field kind of measuring those things, putting them into CAD, and then redistributing them to project managers and people that are going to take down the stone, catalog it, put it back up. but a lot of that stuff's really nitpicky, and I love AutoCAD. I know the industry kind of changed over to Revit, but my office is all Mac, so I can't run Revit, and AutoCAD's just the business. It's got a nice command line. It's clean software. It's very efficient. So I don't know if anyone actually asked me what I do for a job, but yeah, I'm an architectural CAD draftsman. Back when the channel was starting to pick up speed, I was doing a full-time BMW dismantling shop. So anytime you see one of those cold start videos where I'm starting 15 cars, it's because I was starting parts cars. A lot of those were mine at the time, but when I sold my interest in the company in 2015, I left pretty much all of it behind. So just trading them up one by one and then shoveling an inordinate amount of my paychecks into it. Slowly you're able to keep up on it, but just not making frivolous expenses, making sure everything you do to the car has return on investment or it's needed, and then finding clever ways of saving some money while still doing the job right. And then I am a parts guru. I mean, I can find brand new OEM parts for pretty much anything for a fifth or less of list price a lot of times. So that helps a lot too. And the fact that I don't pay any labor rates. If I had to pay labor to dealer service any of the cars I own, I would be in the poorhouse. Third question, James Kovalik, 3 upvotes. Have you done any ETA M20 stroker builds? And if you have, do you have any tips on doing it? Yeah, it's been a while. The last one of those I did with an ETA, it was for turbo application. And the benefit of doing that for the turbo application is the ETA bottom end, not the Super ETA. So the 82 to 86 or 87 bottom end, it's like 7.8 to 1 compression. So if you take that, the higher displacement, lower compression bottom end, and you combine that with the 885 head, the 7 journal, not the Super ETA, they're both the same casting, but you need the one from the 325i, on that bottom end, and then just put a good L-ring head gasket with some copper spray and some ARPs, you can make 400 wheel all day, no problem. And you really don't have much for detonation issues even on pump gas, just because the static compression ratio is so low. But you do get the more modern crank pickup on the front of the engine. You get a check engine light that actually gives you rudimentary diagnostic information, and then it gives you the ability to run like a Megasquirt PNP, which is super nice. I don't recommend it if you're not doing a turbo. What I do recommend for the M20 is finding an 88, 52080 or 325. Not I or E, just 325. Those are kind of parts bin engines because they ran out of the old cylinder heads that were on the ETA. So what they did is they took a version of the ETA intake manifold, but they modified it to run Motronic 1.1, so it has the late style crank pickup already. They took the 325i head and they put a crappier cam in it, single valve springs, but the bottom end is 8.7 to 1 compression or something, and it's still 2.7 liters. It's got nice domed pistons on it, and they're strong. Those are really good for NA. I think if I had to do an M20 and I didn't have metric mechanic engine money, I would do that. Maybe a little bit of mild homebrew port work, Megasquirt. I had a white convertible E30 a long time ago that had a Super ETA in it, and that car just ripped. I mean, those are like 180 wheel horsepower, just in stock configuration, if you put the I head and electronics and intake on a Super ETA. So if you're going to do a stroker for NA, get the 88 stuff. If you're going to do it for boost, any 82 to 87 is fine. It's a cool swap, but there's really nothing inherently wrong with the 2.5 liter bottom end. For daily driving, it still makes really good power. Every time I drive a stock E30 325i, I'm just like, why would you change this engine out? I mean, this car burned a lot of oil, so that's why that engine came out, but I digress. That's my answer there. Question 4, Nick Heno. Why you so sexy? Shoot, I don't know how to answer that. Practice? Definitely. Clearly I try very hard. On any given day, you can find me at work in just jeans and a t-shirt. Then usually after work, I'll switch into something a little more comfortable, but usually that's just changing shoes and then switching out to a similar item of clothing that I don't care if it gets stained, because when I'm coming out to the shop, it's really hard to not get dirty. I mean, I'm in khaki shorts today, which is suicide, really. But Nick, you've been watching like the longest of any commenter, I think. I've seen your comments for years. So thank you for watching that long. My little shout out there. Next question, Jeffrey B, 2 upvotes. Do you have any plans to do any modifications to your 335 or 355, and has the car been reliable? So Jeff's talking about my Ferrari F355. As far as modifications, not really, beyond what I did during the engine out. When I had the engine out, beyond doing the timing belts and just checking everything over, I did do those exhaust manifolds. A lot of people will put the fab speed or the 2B headers on it. I'm a penny pincher, even though I have a Ferrari, but I still wanted to do it right. So I found a company up just north of me in Minneapolis here. They're actually in Barnesville. They do F430 off-the-shelf performance headers, and they were willing to take on my job. So what I did was I found a set of just nuked Motronic 5.2 headers on eBay. I mean, they were bad. And I sent them off up north, and he redid it with this really nice 304 stainless, like a 16 gauge wall thickness, so nice and thick. I did add like 1.5 pounds of weight to the car, but big deal. I won't have to worry about them again. But that was really important to me because those headers are notorious for cracking. And if you get them to start cracking, the lambda on each cylinder starts going out of whack. You start burning valves, you start ruining the valve guides. I don't really know if my 355 has brass or steel valve guides. It was, I think, mid-1998. They all for sure went to steel. But from what I gather, when you have valve guide issues on those cars, it was a long time ago, right when they were new. And it's a lot like the Porsche IMS. It's cars that didn't get driven very much. Yeah, just didn't keep them lubricated. So a lot of the failures were early on, really low mileage cars. My car's at 35,000 now. Still not a hint of smoke anytime I cold started. The engine seems really, really healthy. So I think I lucked out on that. But again, preserving what's there on that engine is important because a used one's like $35,000, and I mean, I can't even afford the car I bought. The bank owns obviously most of it right now. So really, any other modifications? No. I'm gonna get one of the wheels is damaged. I'm gonna get that refinished, and then I'm gonna work on installing a factory Porsche CDR 220 head unit in the car because it's actually the same head unit they used in the 360. And it's a nice modern European head unit that doesn't look tacky, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to keep working on the vacuum exhaust valve. That's currently inoperable, which is kind of a bummer. So the car just drives around with the valve closed. It still sounds really good, but when it's open, that car is a whole different level of noise, even with the stock exhaust. It has race cats. I've never driven one with the stock exhaust and stock cats to know if that's acceptable, but that car has always been just the best sounding, best looking car in my opinion. So yeah, it's been really reliable. Even when I bought it, I mean, I found the cheapest one in the country. That was Rosa Corsa with a stick, and then I lowballed them for a long time, got another 10 grand off just because I agreed to take it as is, you know, a 20-year-old Ferrari that hadn't been serviced in 6 years. And then I flew down to, I think it was just east of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I drove it 840 miles home with my brother, oldest brother. And the car performed really well. I mean, you could tell it wasn't perfectly happy. It had an intermittent miss on really light throttle, but it stayed cool and collective. The air conditioning worked. The paint was in excellent condition. My detailer later detailed it, and he's like, I don't think this thing's ever been detailed before. So there's a lot of good clear coat left on that glass rip paint. So that thing's been great, and I've been driving it a lot more this season. Every time I drive it, things get better. I mean, the car, I've known this for a long time, but if you don't drive a car, it just gets ruined. And clearly that thing hadn't been driven in a long time regularly. So the suspension's getting tighter, the transmission's getting better, especially after I adjusted it. Throttle response is better, idle's getting smoother. The horn started working randomly the other day, which was awesome because that's expensive and it wasn't working when I bought the car. But I mean, you'll see more videos on it. I still have to change out the soft top, which has had a tear in it since I bought it. I may do a video on removing all of the soft top hydraulics. I have converted the top from hydraulic power to manual just because that mechanism was kind of when I bought it, and it's the actual work that the hydraulic cylinders do is just basically lifting it up out of the back of the car. All of the forward, backward, and the latching you do manually anyway. So I'm just going to take all the electronic stuff out and make it easier for myself. So yeah, more videos, but I'm not really going to mod it. It's just been my dream car. Next question, Marshall Owens. Favorite BMW engine? And to complement that question, least favorite BMW engine? Well, I'm going to try to answer this as objectively as I can. Favorite BMW engine is probably the S54. Super high specific output, great torque, shockingly reliable, and man, the noise. Every time I drive one of the M3s, I don't want anything else. I mean, I have tremendous respect for the S65 that followed it, still mechanical water pump, but still dealing with rod bearings, and I'm an inline six guy. So S54 is my favorite. Least favorite, without a doubt, is the BMW N20, that new four-cylinder turbo. When it came out, I had such high hopes for that engine. And with that, the new B45, I think it's the update of the N20 where they just moved the timing chain from the front of the engine where you could service it to the back where you can't, like an Audi. And those things, I don't know if it's just too light of oil, too long of intervals, or just general neglect and heat, or if it's a fueling issue, kind of thinning out the oil with fuel. But like clockwork, those things are dropping timing chains and destroying themselves. But before 60,000 miles, I mean, it's a plague of an issue. So any 320i, 328, 528, X3, X1 that has that engine, I stay far away. I'm hoping someday somebody figures out a way to bulletproof it. And I think if you bought one brand new and you put, 0W40 in it and you change the oil every 5,000 miles, you could make one go 160,000 miles, no problem. But the fact that they run this nasty super light oil and you're doing 15,000 mile intervals, the car it can't handle it. So although it's great on paper, it's light, it makes good power, good fuel economy, the reliability is just awful. But I mean, it's a close runner-up. I mean, the new twin turbo V8s, the amount of intercoolers and turbos and valve stem seals those things go through, the N62s of the valve stem seals. Basically, I would not buy any four-cylinder or V8 from BMW after 1998. It's just not worth it. So the six cylinders are still really good, thank goodness. So yeah, just stay away. The automatics have been getting better and better, it seems. The fluid's getting more expensive, but as long as you're willing to keep up on the manufacturer recommended service interval on those things and you ignore what BMW says, which is never change it, you should be just fine. And then electric water pumps, don't get me started on those. But yep, S54 favorite, N20 least favorite. Next question, VX97. What do you think of E38s? If you like them, which E38 do you like more, the 740 or the 750? I grew up with E38s. The first BMWs in my family were a 1989 535i and a 1988 750iL. And I fell in love with those things. Before that, my family had a bunch of GM garbage. Pardon me. I'm going to make sure the video's still going here. I don't want to do this whole thing and then have to redo it, and I'm just using my phone, so. Oh yeah, we're good. All right. Yeah, no, so those were the first two cars. Man, coming from GM to those things in the 90s was awesome, but the 750 got traded in for a 97 long wheelbase 740i, so the M62 non-Vanos. And that was my first experience with a really big backseat. It had those little footrest things. It was just super cool. So yeah, I have a lot of fond memories of riding around in that thing. Eventually it was traded for a short wheelbase 2000 740iL, or sorry, I'm retarded. And we had that thing for a long time. That was actually an ex-BMW kind of press vehicle, but it was in-house press. It wasn't used by journalists, so it was in good shape. I think we got it with 13,000 miles or something like that, 5 years old, and had that 6 years, and that one was awesome. We only sold it because I was trying to get my dad, who was his car, into something a little bit smaller. Got him an E46, but he, after a couple of years, just like, I wanted a 7 Series back, so he ended up finding one that I told him not to buy, but it was a 2001 short wheelbase non-sport 740i. He bought it from a client of his, so the interior was in great shape. It had full service history, but it was starting to rust already on the bottoms of the doors. And when that happens on E38s, they're gone, which is really sad because especially the late model body and exterior, boy, that's a gorgeous car. That is so timeless, especially with the M parallels. I threw a set of genuine M parallels on it, which were eventually stolen. which is ridiculous. But it's a hard place to be, because I think I would probably pick, my ideal E38 would be a short wheelbase 2001 750i sport package, because I want the shadow line, I want the ride height, I want the steering, I want the seats, and I want the more reliable V12, just to get away from that TU M62, which is just plagued with timing chain problems. But that car doesn't exist, so if I had to get one that actually exists, it would definitely be a late 740i Sport, probably in a Muller red. Then I would 6-speed swap it. That car would be primo. The M62 TU isn't actually a particularly bad engine. It's just it's neglect. And the timing chain, the guide rail is like 22 inches long or something like that. So if you're running 5W30 and it's lost its elasticity, you're going to run into problems. But if you're motivated and you got a lot of time, you can do it at home for $1,500, and then you're good for another 160,000 miles. The top ends are really good. The bottom ends are really good. Even that ZF5 HP24 transmission, if you keep fluid in it, it's pretty good. But yeah, no, E38s are good cars. Probably my favorite 7 Series. E32s are neat, but they don't do anything for me. E65s, I mean, I like those cars. I really like the technology. The interiors are really nice. But the N62 and that 6-speed auto, that first gen, not so good. F01, sure, I guess if you got a 740 with the auto, the 6-cylinder, that'd be fine. But I probably wouldn't buy a 7 Series. All right, next question. Mode Alif Ramli, what do you think of the M50B25 motor? I like both variants of it, the non-Vanos and the Vanos. My first swaps on these were budget swaps, so they were finding a 5 Series or a 3 Series from 92 to 95, and I was dropping the whole thing out, shoving it in an E30, so I had a whole bunch of them. Some of them were in great shape, some of them were terrible. The steepest learning curve back in the day was just learning about the cooling systems and how picky they are on keeping those new. You don't have to do anything fancy with them, but you do have to keep a new water pump, a new thermostat, because if you get them a little bit hot, the cylinder head cracks between the number 3 exhaust valve, pop machine starting up, sorry. Number 3 exhaust valve and the water jacket, then you need a new head. You can Magnaflux it, but it's not cost effective. So the 91 to 92 non-Vanos, that thing is like a factory boost engine. You pull that thing apart on the bottom, it's got these gigantic I-beam forged connecting rods, awesome forged crankshaft. It's got pretty good cast pistons in it. That thing, if you're going to do a boosted 24 valve and you don't want to spend like low compression S52 money with rods, get one of those. They take boost like a champ. The TU, so 93 to 95, better NA power, torque, just because they added Vanos. And those are, again, really reliable. If you don't cook them, they last forever. So a little bit lower revving, a little bit harder to work on, but still pretty easy and cheap. Boy, those engines are cheap. So that was kind of the first modern, I think, BMW engine, because I mean that was being made alongside the M70 for a while, which is technology from the 70s updated for 1980s. And this was, I think that was the first ever production engine to have a injection molded plastic intake manifold. It was, I think, the first BMW engine to do, it predates the V8, so it was the first one to do multi-port fuel injection. Well, no, the 318 might have beat it, but it was close. They were designed alongside one another. I don't know, it had a lot of really cool technology that you see on a much, much more modern car. I think if you went to a showroom in 1991 and you saw an M50, you'd be blown away. It's kind of like direct injection or variable geometry turbos. Cool stuff. So I think the M50B25 is a great engine. I think it's let down by a lot of idiots, but okay, next question. Vitalij Sidikin. Are you working in a car shop or do you earn money with your shop? How many cars do you have and what's your favorite? That's a lot of questions in that one question. What you see here is kind of my shop. This is space that I rent from a family member, actually, who is also into cars in the kind of same way I am. So this is how I have access to a lift. They're kind enough to let me in here for right now. Eventually, I'm sure they'll kick me out. and I'll have to get some lifts in my own house. But yeah, this is my shop. I do side work from time to time. A lot of the money I make is honestly just fixing my own cars, making them better, and then getting bored with them and selling them on for a profit. So it kind of sucks to have to pay tax on the profits and all that kind of stuff, but it's still extra income, and I still enjoy doing it for now. I do work on customer cars, like I said, but I'm really selective about what jobs I do take, because I don't want this to turn into something I resent. I really enjoy working on cars, so, and I even enjoy working on customer cars when it's the right swap, but something like a brake job I'll still do here and there too for friends, just to try to save them money. Hate when people get ripped off, so I'm more than capable of doing it. How many cars do I have? I think I have 11 right now, 12 if you count my Vespa. And the favorite, I don't know. I mean, that's why I have so many cars. I can't find one that's just like the best at everything. If I had to just have one car, it would be my 2007 328 wagon, because that thing is just badass. I mean, it can tow a car trailer, it can take 5 people on a trip, it gets good fuel economy, it's pretty fast, handles awesome, it looks really great. That's my do-it-all car. It's not really the best at any of those things, but that's my best all-rounder. I think the most unique car, the one I get the best reaction in, is either Blubski, the 76 Mercedes with the V8. Nobody hates you in that car. Even if you're bombing down the street just making a ton of racket, nobody cares. It's a 40-year-old Mercedes that's just hustling. So that's definitely the crowd favorite, I think. The right-hand drive E30 wagons, I haven't driven Brexit a lot, just because I got it, a year ago, and I started swapping it 9 months ago. But anytime people come up next to you and you're on the wrong side of the car, it inevitably gets attention. I think that actually draws more attention than the M3s out on the road. So that's a lot of fun. My favorite one to actually drive, probably the 8 Series. That's a shockingly good car. That was my first ever, like, step it up nice car. I had to stretch so far financially to get that thing back in 2009 or 10, whenever I bought it. And it's been super reliable. I got lucky and I bought one that had been well looked after, which is imperative with that V12, but thing's been great. It's awesome. It gets okay fuel economy and high-speed highway treks. It's super comfortable, and it looks great. I think that thing is one of the most sexy cars ever. And it's a super slippery aerodynamic shape. I think that had the best production car drag coefficient for like 15 years or something like that. So that's my favorite one to drive. Blubski is probably my favorite one to take to like a car gathering. And then if I had to take a car to a track day, the Fiat for sure. That thing is just, the fun per dollar is just not matchable. Thing is great. People give Fiats shit all the time, but they're really good cars. Next question, Bubski2. Any ideas what you might have for future crazy builds or modifications once the current projects get wrapped up? I'll start on the back side of the question and work my way forward. Current projects getting wrapped up. By nature, a project car is never really wrapped up, so I'll always be kind of working on the stuff that's here right now until it gets sold. Some of them will never get sold. But I'll kind of let you guys in on what I'm thinking about doing next for a crazy build. I'm sure there will be other non-crazy projects in the meantime, but I'm thinking about taking an E30, hopefully a late model 4-door in reasonable condition, and I want to get a General Motors Trailblazer engine. So the 4.2 liter all aluminum 24 valve dual overhead cam straight 6. These things are like $250 or $300 complete running, and they run the same PCM as an LS, so they're super easy to crack. And even with the truck manifolds and the truck exhaust, they make 270 horsepower and about that in torque. It opened up a little bit, they make north of 300, but they're all aluminum, 24 valve inline 6. So it's kind of the same flavor as a BMW. It's actually, they sound really good when you have a set of headers on them. And then the Colorado work trucks, those 4-cylinder and 5-cylinder trucks you see running around all the time with Napa hats on them or pest control. I mean, those are they made so many of those in a stick. And that's basically, that transmission's basically an Eisen AX15, like out of the XJ Jeeps. So they're actually really strong transmissions, even though it's licensed differently and it's made by New Venture, New Process. I think it's New Venture. But those transmissions you can get for $75. A 5-speed manual transmission, bolts right up to the 6-cylinder. So that's kind of, I think it'd be a fun build because they make pretty good power, and as long as I can physically fit the tall engine in the engine bay, which is my main concern, I think that would be awesome for a swap. I mean, if you could make up a set of mounts and a set of headers, I think people would do that all the time because you can get parts for it anywhere. The engines are basically free. So drift guys, I'm sure, would love it. The transmissions are pretty stout and they're basically free. I don't know, it's a lot of power. I mean, it's almost S54 power for like M20 money. So I might be completely wrong, it might not fit at all, but I would like to do that. I don't foresee that happening anytime real soon, just because I have so much going on. But yeah, that's next on my kind of wish list for projects. So next question, Eric Dawson, favorite brake pad compound? For the street, Hawk HPS. For the track, I would say HP Plus. Seem pretty good. So there's a lot of good brake pads. I've gone to the track with like centric base model semi-metallics, and it's been fine too. But I have HPSs in a lot of the street cars, and those are just fabulous pads. HP Pluses are definitely better. They don't glaze quite as easily, which I like. And they squeak, which I really like. I like squeaking track brakes, even on the street. Next question, Joshua Sanchez. What car do you hate the most? One you've owned, worked on, owned, or just plain old hate? Oof. I probably should have like pre-read these and had this all planned out. That's I might have to come back to that one. That's a tough question. Yeah, I'll come back to that one. Just give me a second. Next question, Nathaniel H. For light track use, general hooning, what would you recommend for a power setup for an E30? Individual throttle bodies, turbo, engine swap, what do you feel gives the best value to fun ratio? Touched on this a little bit earlier, but track use, general hooning, I would say either do the Super ADA stroker with a little bit of headwork and mega squirt. Probably looking at 195, 200 wheel horsepower, pretty reliable. For cheap, you don't have to change anything else. But if you want a little more power than that, honestly, these are kind of, they're not common yet, but the M54 B30, the E46 330 engine, those are badass in E30s. Not necessarily the cheapest thing to dump in, but they're not terrible. You can use pretty much any exhaust from an M50 swap. It's the same exact setup for exhaust. You can use even an M20 transmission on it if you want, if you're motivated. You can run the E34 oil pan, but you have to make a custom pickup tube unless you have a contact in Europe that can get you an E38 728i pickup tube, which looks like will fit perfect into that pan. The computers are pretty easy to crack, the pre-2003 computers on those. And the hardest part really is just like wiring it into the car, but it's really not that bad. You get a full OBD2 port. The engine is lighter than an M20. It makes S52 power, and they're really economical. So if you want to do a little more future-proof swap, that M54 is the way to go. I've only done one. I'll probably do another one in the future just to kind of vet the swap a little bit more. The first one I did, I pulled parts from everywhere, so it just took forever to kind of sort out the issues that I made for myself. But man, the little bit I drove that car with the ZHP engine, the thing's just bananas. So that would be my ideal kind of mixed use track everyday setup that I think would be reliable too. ITB's not very streetable, but sound cool. Turbo, sure, yeah, I guess. It was a lot of fun, but I don't think I would do a turbo on a daily or anything, or a track car, definitely not the heat. Swaps, they're great. I mean, you could toss an M52 in for pretty cheap too. Those are well documented, but I think if I was going to do 24 valve at this point, I'd go straight to the M54. Mohammed Osama, what would be, in your opinion, a car that is fun to own, cheap, and easy to maintain for 19-year-olds? I would probably go with an E36 328i manual if you could find one that's rust-free. If you can find one. There's some kids that live in the house on the property here, and they were being a little noisy, so. Okay. Oh yeah, the cheap, easy to maintain for a 19-year-old. I'm assuming you want to go BMW just because you're commenting on my channel. But yeah, I mean, even an E46 with a stick, as long as you maintain it well, should be fine. An E39 with a stick, that'd be really good. As far as non-BMW stuff, I don't know. I mean, it's pretty easy to find a really reliable car that's easy to work on as long as you just buy a manual transmission and you get some service history with it. When I was 19, I was already buying E30s. So, I mean, if you have an ability to drive an E30 and not, drive it through winters, that's a great option. They're pretty easy to work on. I'd say E34s are a little easier to work on still. So if you want to get your feet wet, you could buy a beater E34 with an engine that's good. And then when that thing rusts away, you could find a nice E30 and then just dump the powertrain straight in it. I don't know if that really answers your question or not. The most reliable car in the world is a 93 to 97 Toyota Corolla with the 1.6 and the 5-speed. So if you just want to not think about it, get one of those. The Insane Biker asks, why aren't you into drifting? I have a lot of friends that do it. I supply a lot of parts to drift people, but it's just not my crowd. I don't know. I mean, I live in an area where we get a lot of snowfall and stuff like that, so in the winter I am always sideways. I enjoy oversteer a lot. I go down on frozen lakes, drift around courses, so that's great, but as far as, tandem drifting with people on a parking lot, it's just not that appealing to me. I enjoy watching it. I enjoy a lot of the builds, but missiles kind of piss me off. 240s are kind of played out. I don't know. A good friend of mine locally has an E30 with a Ford 302 in it, and he does a lot of drifting, and it's super cool, but I'm just not into it. I would much rather spend my day on a road course or doing an autocross. Next question, Marky D GFX. Question, why do you call your E30 Touring Brexit? And do you know any good 24-valve E30 turbo kits, or would piecing one together be better? The E30 Touring is called Brexit because that car was originally sold in Wales before the European Union was established. And it's just got, it's got a Welsh flag on the front license plate. It's got it on the front windshield at the top. It's got a European Union Great Britain sticker thing on the back. And I imported it in the year of the Brexit. So just kind of the region it came from, the time it came in, I don't know. It makes sense, doesn't it? So, I don't know. Everyone that's seen it locally has been like, okay, that's hilarious. But then I explained to them why I did it, and they're like, okay, that's even better. So, I like vanity plates, and Brexit seemed to fit really well. So, that's why I did that. Yes. As far as the turbo kit, go to DIYPSI.com. Local parts distributor, Blunt Tech, good friend of mine, Steve Peterson. He teamed up with Jake at Classic Daily, and they pieced together with Arcade Tunes and Blunt Tech's manifold basically any level of turbo kit you want for a 24-valve E30. I have their manifold on Brexit. It's not really designed for right-hand drive, but I made it work. But the manifold's awesome. Arcade Tunes, second to none for the MS411. Awesome hardware. If you can afford it, great. If you can't do that, you still pretty much want the Blunt Tech manifold. The cheapest way to do it, Blunt Tech manifold, get a wastegate block off, get that China charger that I run, that $130 shipped TO4E, fab up your downpipe, get some 60-pound injectors, or 80 if you're running 85, and then if you're running OBD1, try Tuner Pro, or a Megasquirt plug-and-play. I would suggest Megasquirt. If you're going to start tuning your own turbo stuff, that's the thing with probably the shallowest learning curve. The base map that it's able to generate for you as far as timing and fuel, it's still going to need tweaking before you're going to want to lean into it, but it's probably not going to blow up your car as quickly as messing around with Tuner Pro. So You can do it cheaply, but I would say it's well worth spending the money for that well-rounded tune, because then you can run the MS41, you get OBD2 diagnostics. That's what I would do. They don't pay me, not even close, but they have the best turnkey product at the moment for that. Next question, Kapli Patel. Hey Eric, hope all is well. What is the craziest car you've ever owned? That Mercedes, for sure. Bought that car in 2008. It was a 4-cylinder, 65-horse diesel, 4-speed manual. Cool car. Looked cool. Very classy, but slow as hell. I mean, it did 0 to 60 in 32 seconds. I don't know why my middle brother and I, we co-own the car. I don't know why we picked the 5.5 liter M117. I think it's just because it was relatively cheap to pick up a parts car. And it has kind of the look to it that we wanted for the swap. I mean, if you open the hood, other than the intake and, you know, the Dash 8A and fuel rails and stuff like that, I mean, the engine looks like it could have come in there potentially. So we like that. The tuning on it that I've done has been pretty minimal, so it's still really, really naughty as far as the noises it makes. And it's fast. I mean, it does 0 to 100 in like 13 seconds an hour, something like that. So that car is just bananas. No power steering. It does have vacuum assisted brakes. But I mean, the butt dyno tells me that thing is 350 plus horsepower and almost 400 foot-pounds probably. So that car at 3,050 pounds or whatever it is without me in it, she boogies. And just the noise too. It's great. Everyone that sees it seems to love it. So that Mercedes, definitely the craziest car. And I've had a lot of cars. I think I've had, not counting parts cars, I think I've had 67 cars. I do keep a spreadsheet. I gotta go back to this now. What car do you hate the most? Man, it's rare for me to hate a car. I would say it's probably gonna be something like the BMW X6 or like the 3 Series Grand Coupe or whatever. No, not the Grand Coupe, the Grand Touring, the GT, or the 5 Series GT. In BMW land, those are the stupid ones. Like, just give us a damn wagon and burn these other models. Like, I understand you're trying to find a niche that's probably there, but the fact that they're killing off manual transmissions and the fun cars to give us these nasty, bloated hunchback things, can't do it. As far as just outright hating a car, I'd say the most modern thing that I hate is probably like the Volkswagen Atlas or something. Just a, you know, a beige mobile that has no charisma. It's got fake exhaust tips. It's just got nothing. People just buying cars to use them as appliances. I mean, sure, I understand where you're coming from, but I can't get past that. I really like unique stuff. I pretty much won't buy a car unless it's somewhat unique, or at least uncommon. And I don't know. I like weird combinations of stuff. So, I mean, I still buy stuff like this Boxster just because it was cheap, and I was shopping for a convertible and just happened to fall into my lap. So, honestly, most of the time when I end up with a car, it's not because I'm looking for it. It's because it's a great deal and it gets forwarded my way. So, that's pretty much all I have for questions from you guys. If you have stuff in the future, I mean, I'm always happy to answer it in the comments as they come up. But I wanted to save most of the common questions, like, oh, what do you do for work? How do you able to afford all this? Where do you keep all your cars? Which, incidentally, I rent a lot of storage units. That's where I keep my cars. I usually keep 4 at home, 5 here, and 1 or 2 out in some storage units with my parts collections. So that's all she wrote for this. Shut down my garbage laptop, and yeah, as always, thanks for watching. I can't believe how much the channel's grown over the last couple of years. I was just on Facebook the other day, and it had a time hop, and I posted a screenshot like 2 years ago, and I was at 1 million total channel views, or upload views, and 1,000 subscribers, and I couldn't believe it. And now I'm at, what, 5-6 million views or something like that, 6,000 subscribers. So couldn't have done it without you guys watching and referring to other people. I do get some features from YouTube sometimes, just kind of throwing them in as suggested videos, but sharing and subscribing, as well as liking and commenting, all those things bump traffic, and the more traffic bumps I get, the more YouTube pays me and the more hood rat things I can do in my garage. So either way, the content's not going to change. Hopefully it gets nothing but better, but if you have any suggestions or stuff you'd like to see or stuff you are not a fan of, let me know. Things that aren't going to change is probably going to be I'm not going to get somebody to come out here and hold the camera so you can see more of the process. I try to do as much as I can of the important bits of a job when I'm doing a walkthrough or something like that, but that and editing. I don't have time for editing. So anyway, thanks again for watching. Hopefully this helped kind of fill you in on the man behind the camera. It's just me, just this goofy dude. So yeah, stay tuned. Thanks a lot, guys.